Hey everybody, welcome back to U.S. History. So, just as a heads up, we are doing two sections of notes today. We're covering Pearl Harbor and the Holocaust today. So, go ahead and get your notes out. Let's get started. So, it's important to note prior to doing Pearl Harbor, we have to talk about Japanese expansion. Like Germany, Japan had decided to set on an empire, and they were set on taking over the entire Pacific. That entire list there is all of their properties that they controlled prior to Pearl Harbor. Here's a nice couple of maps for you depicting that. So, many of these were French and British colonies. Now, the French and British were bogged down against the Nazis and were unable to defend them. So, realistically, they fell to the Japanese pretty quickly. Now, why bomb Pearl Harbor? Well, it was the only thing in the way of controlling the Pacific, and a preeminent strike, they thought, would deter the U.S. from getting involved in World War II. Oh, how wrong they would be. So, Pearl Harbor. They reached it on December 7th, 1941 at 7:48 a.m. That is before 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. The first wave had 183 planes, the second wave had 171. The attack was over by 9:30, and in less than 2 hours, over 2,400 Americans were killed, almost 1,200 were wounded, 21 ships were sunk and or damaged, 8 battleships were damaged, that's nearly the entire Pacific Fleet, and 300 aircraft were damaged and or destroyed. As you can see from this image here, anything in orange was damaged, everything in red was destroyed, or sunk, excuse me. So, however, all 3 of the U.S. aircraft carriers that were assigned to the Pacific Fleet were at sea and avoided the attack, which was a huge advantage for the U.S. forces. Their survival would prove crucial to the U.S. war effort against Japan in the South Pacific. The next day, December 8th, the U.S. declared war on Germany. 3 days after that, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. In a 4-day span, the U.S. went from isolation to fighting a world war on 2 fronts. That's why things will be a little difficult for them going forward. So that's it for Pearl Harbor. So let's move on to the Holocaust. So some background information. Hitler's master race, he believed in the superior Aryan race, so those that were light-skinned, blue eyes of Germanic heritage. And he wanted to remove or eliminate inferior peoples, those that were gypsies, disabled, Jewish people. He primarily went after Jews, though. Now, he finds support for the belief that they are to blame for Germany's failures, and in 1935 passes the Nuremberg Laws, which prevented Jews from being citizens of the Third Reich. They were stripped of their jobs and property. They were forced to wear a Star of David. And anybody who had 3 or 4 Jewish grandparents were considered Jews. Didn't matter if you identified yourself as a Jew or belonged to a Jewish religious community. So, regardless, let's say my grandparents were all Jewish, but I'm not. Even though I am their descendant, I'm technically still considered Jewish. So the original plan was to relocate them, to remove them from Germany. They put them in overcrowded ghettos in Poland, where hunger, overcrowding, and disease were common, but it really didn't solve what they were wanting to do. Then comes the final solution. Unable to remove them, the Nazis began to organize their extermination. They experimented with different methods. Nazi death squads known as the Einsatzgruppen shot Jews on sight. They decided, well, that's an impractical waste of military resources and too hard on the mental health of the members of their death squads. At the Wannsee Conference in 1942, senior Nazi leaders drafted the final solution, and the permanent death camps opened in 1942. The ghettos were emptied and herded like cattle onto trains and deported, and the death camps were surrounded by work camps where hunger and brutality were quite common. Those unfit to work were gassed, and 6 million would die. Now, upon arrival in one of these camps, depending on your age, determined where you went right off the bat. If you were under the age of 16 or over the age of 60, you were immediately sent to the gas chamber, under the guise that you were going to go take a shower. So you would enter a locker room, take off your clothes, put them in a locker, enter what you thought were the showers, be locked in and then gassed and died, and then your bodies would be burned in a crematorium. 6 million would die over the course of the Holocaust. So here's some statistics. This is our last slide for today. In 1933, 9 million Jews lived in 21 European countries. By 1945, 2 out of every 3 were dead. That's 66% of the population. Poland lost 91% of the Jewish population that it had. 9 countries lost more than 80% of the Jewish population that they had pre-World War II. There were 6 primary death camps: Auschwitz-Birkenau, Belzec, Chełmno, Majdanek, Sobibor, and Treblinka. These were all located in Poland. Estimated 3 million were killed at Auschwitz-Birkenau as alone. Now, this is the gate to Auschwitz. This is Arbeit macht frei, which translates to work will set you free. Oh, how wrong were those words. I've got a couple supplemental videos I'm going to show you all, so we'll watch those. Your assignment is a reflection on the Holocaust. I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.